The station called Apex Prime floated in the darkness of space like a giant wheel of light. It was bigger than most cities, home to thousands of creatures from hundreds of different worlds. Today, it was even more crowded than usual. The Grand Assembly was happening, and everyone who mattered in the galaxy had come. Ships arrived one after another. Some were sleek and silver, moving without sound. Others were organic, living vessels that pulsed with strange colors. A few looked like ancient warships, covered in armor and weapons. Each carried ambassadors, leaders, and warriors from their home worlds. Inside the massive Concordat Hall, delegates filled the seats. The room was enormous, with a ceiling so high it created its own weather. Beings of every shape and size gathered there. Some had 6 legs, others had none. Some breathed oxygen, while others wore special suits filled with methane or ammonia. Some were tall as trees, others small as children, but they all had one thing in common. They all belonged here. They were all important species in the galaxy, all except one. The human delegation arrived last. There were only 3 of them. In a hall filled with thousands, 3 humans seemed like nothing at all. They walked down the long entrance ramp, and eyes turned to watch them. Whispers started immediately. The lead human wore armor. It was not like the armor anyone else wore. Most species had moved past physical armor long ago. They used energy shields that shimmered around their bodies like soap bubbles. They wore biosuits that could stop bullets and heal wounds at the same time. They had personal force fields that made them nearly invisible, but this human wore metal, heavy, bulky metal that made loud sounds with each step. Clank, clank, clank. The armor was dark gray, scratched and dented in places. It covered him completely from head to toe. His face was hidden behind a helmet with a dark visor. Tubes ran along the sides, connecting different parts. Small lights blinked on the chest plate, red and yellow and green. The other 2 humans walked beside him. They wore lighter armor, not as heavy. One was a woman with short dark hair, the other a young man who looked nervous. But everyone was watching the one in the middle, the one in the heavy armor. "Humans," someone said with a laugh, "still playing with metal suits like children." More laughter rippled through the nearby sections. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only joined the Concordat 70 years ago. In galactic time, that was nothing. Just yesterday. And in those 70 years, they had not impressed anyone much. They were weak. Their technology was behind. Their ships were slow. Their worlds were few. The only reason they had survived this long was luck. They had no real enemies yet. No one thought they were worth fighting. They were protected by the Concordat rules, like children protected by adults. That was how most species saw them. The human in the heavy armor reached his assigned seat. It was in the lower section, far from the important delegates, down where the minor species sat, the species that had no real power, the ones who came to watch and agree with whatever the strong decided. He sat down slowly. The chair groaned under the weight of his armor. More laughter came from nearby seats. Even his chair could barely hold him. "Ambassador Day," a mechanical voice spoke through the hall's speakers. "You are recognized. Please state your credentials." The human in the heavy armor stood again. His voice came through speakers in his helmet, clear and calm. "Day of Earth, Ambassador of the Terran Defense Corps, here to speak for humanity and its colonies." "Credentials accepted," the mechanical voice replied. Day sat down again. That was it. No grand speech, no show of power, just a simple statement. He was here. That was all. The woman beside him leaned close. She spoke quietly, but some nearby aliens had good hearing. "They are laughing at us again, Dee." "Let them laugh, Yuna," Day replied softly. "We are not here to be liked. We are here to be heard." The young man on his other side shifted nervously. His name was Minho, and this was his first assembly. He had trained for 2 years to come here, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. Thousands of aliens, all more advanced, all looking down on humanity. It was overwhelming. "Focus, Minho," Day said without looking at him. "Watch and learn. This is how the galaxy works." The assembly began. A tall, crystalline being floated to the center platform. Its body was made of living glass that chimed like bells when it moved. This was the speaker, the one who ran the assembly. It was from a species so old that they had forgotten their own planet's name. They lived in space now, in cities made of light. "The 942nd Grand Assembly is now in session," the speaker announced. Its voice was like music. "We have much to discuss, treaties to review, disputes to settle, new members to consider." The real business began. Species after species came forward. They talked about trade routes and mining rights. They argued about border conflicts and territory claims. They made deals and broke old ones. Hours passed. Day sat quietly in his heavy armor, watching everything, saying nothing. Around him, other delegates moved freely. They got up to talk with allies. They left to get food or drink. They stretched and relaxed. But Day stayed in his seat. He did not move except to shift his weight slightly every now and then. Yuna and Minho stayed close, but even they got up occasionally. Several delegates noticed. Some thought it was respect. Humans showing they took the assembly seriously. Others thought it was fear. Humans too scared to move around the important people. But a few, the observant ones, noticed something else. They saw the way Day's hands gripped the armrests. They saw the small trembles that ran through his armor. They saw the medical readouts on his chest plate flashing yellow warnings. In the higher seats where the powerful species sat, a group of insectoid beings watched the humans with particular interest. They were Velthrians, an empire that controlled 40 star systems. Their technology was among the best in the galaxy. Their military was feared. Their ambassadors commanded respect. One of them stood. She was tall, even for a Velthrian, with deep purple chitin covering her body. Her compound eyes caught and reflected light like jewels. Her name was Hana, and she was the senior ambassador of her empire. She had been coming to these assemblies for 20 years. She looked down at the human in the heavy armor and felt something like pity, or maybe it was contempt. With Velthrians, it was hard to tell the difference. "Look at them," she said to her companions, "sitting there in that ridiculous metal cage. Do they really think that makes them warriors?" Her companions clicked their mandibles in agreement. "They are primitives," one said. "Give them another 100 years. Maybe they will catch up to the rest of us." "Or they will die out," another added. "Most new species do." Hana stared at the human called Day. He had not moved in 3 hours, just sitting there in his heavy armor, watching, listening. What was the point? What could humanity possibly offer the galaxy? Tonight there would be a reception. A social gathering where the real deals were made, where alliances were formed over drinks and casual conversation. Hana decided she would talk to this human ambassador, not because she cared what he had to say, but because it would be entertaining. A little amusement before the boring negotiations tomorrow. She had no idea that this decision would change everything. The reception hall was different from the assembly chamber. It was meant to feel comfortable, welcoming. The gravity was set to standard, 1G, which suited most species. The atmosphere was a neutral mix that allowed most beings to breathe freely or at least comfortably through light filters. Soft music played from hidden speakers, a blend of sounds from different worlds. Tables floated throughout the room, hovering at different heights to accommodate different species. Food and drinks from 100 worlds filled them. Some dishes glowed, others moved. A few were still alive, though sedated. Every delegate could find something from home here. The humans arrived together. Day still wore his heavy armor. Yuna and Minho wore their lighter suits, but even those looked crude compared to what others wore. A few delegates glanced their way, then looked away. Humans were not interesting, not worth the time. Day moved to a quiet corner. Each step still made that same heavy sound. Clank, clank, clank. He stood near a wall where he could see the whole room. Yuna got them drinks, something that looked like water but tasted like flowers. Minho tried to look confident, but his eyes kept darting around nervously. Relax, Day told him quietly. We are just here to observe tonight. Tomorrow we present our proposal. Will anyone even listen? Minho asked. He was young, only 25. This was his first time off Earth's system. They all look at us like we are insects. Then we prove we are not, Day said simply. Across the room, Hana moved through the crowd like royalty. Other delegates made way for her. When she spoke, people listened. She was from the Velthrian Empire, and that meant power. Her species had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. They had forgotten more about technology than humans had ever learned. She talked with a reptilian ambassador about trade agreements. She laughed with a gaseous being about some shared joke. She negotiated mining rights with a hive mind that spoke in buzzing tones. This was her world. She belonged here. Then she saw the human again, still in that armor. Still standing rigidly in the corner like a statue. It was almost sad, she thought, almost pathetic. They tried so hard to look strong, these humans, but everyone could see the truth. She made her decision. She would talk to him. Not privately, though. That would give him too much respect. No, she would do it publicly, where others could hear, where her words would travel through the assembly by tomorrow. It would be a lesson for these humans, a reminder of their place. Hana gathered her entourage and crossed the room. She moved with graceful confidence, her 6 legs carrying her smoothly. The crowd parted for her. Some followed to watch. Word spread quickly. The Velthrian ambassador was going to talk to the humans. This might be interesting. By the time Hana reached the corner, a small crowd had formed around them. Perhaps 30 delegates, all pretending to talk among themselves while watching. The room had grown quieter. Dai saw her coming. He did not move. He did not even turn his head. He just stood there, waiting. Hana stopped in front of him. She was taller than him, even with his armor. She looked down at the dark visor that hid his face. Ambassador Day, she said loudly, her voice carrying across the room. I have been curious about something all day. Ambassador Hana, Day replied. His voice through the helmet speakers was calm and neutral. How may I help you? That armor you wear, Hana said, gesturing at him with one of her chitinous limbs. Is it ceremonial, some kind of traditional costume from your world? A few quiet laughs came from the watching delegates. Day remained still. It is functional armor, Ambassador. Standard issue for the Terran Defense Corps. Functional? Hana's voice carried amusement. But surely your species does not use such equipment in actual combat. It must weigh, what, 200 kilograms? More? 240, Day confirmed, plus or minus depending on loadout. More laughter, louder now. Hana tapped the armor with one leg, making a hollow metallic sound. And you fight in this? How do you even move? Our soldiers wear suits that weigh less than their own exoskeletons. This looks like it would crush you just from standing still. Yuna stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. Ambassador Hana, I do not think... Day raised one armored hand slightly. Yuna stopped talking immediately. She stepped back, but her jaw was clenched tight. Minho looked like he wanted to say something too. But Day's gesture held him back as well. The armor serves its purpose, Day said to Hana. His tone had not changed. Still calm, still neutral. What purpose is that? Hana pressed. She was enjoying this now. The crowd had grown larger. More delegates were stopping to watch. Protection from enemy weapons? We have energy shields for that. Protection from radiation. We have bioadaptive suits. Protection from harsh environments. We have atmospheric generators. What exactly does 240 kilograms of primitive metal protect you from? The question hung in the air. Day stood silent for a long moment. The watching delegates leaned closer, curious about his answer. Would he get angry? Would he admit human technology was backward? Would he try to make excuses? Finally, Day spoke. Would you like to see what is beneath the armor, Ambassador Hana? The question surprised her. She had not expected that. Beneath it? Yes, Day said. You asked what it protects me from. I could tell you, or I could show you. Which would you prefer? Hana's compound eyes glittered. This was getting better. Was the human going to remove his armor? Here, in front of everyone? The pride of humans was legendary, at least according to the few species that had dealt with them. For him to remove his armor, to show vulnerability, that would be a true humiliation. By all means, Hana said, gesturing broadly, show us the fragile creature that needs such protection. We are all very curious. The crowd murmured with interest. This was unexpected entertainment. Some pulled out recording devices. Whatever happened next would spread through the assembly within the hour. Day reached up to his helmet. His armored fingers touched a series of seals along the neck. There was a hissing sound as pressure released. The seals glowed blue, then green, then went dark. More hisses came from the chest plate, the arm joints, the leg sections. The armor was not just metal. It was a complete system, sealed and pressurized. The first piece to come off was a gauntlet. Day pulled it free from his right hand, and everyone could see his bare hand for the first time. It was covered in scars, old ones and new ones. Some were pink and fresh, still healing. Others were white and faded, years old. His fingers trembled slightly as they gripped the gauntlet. The other gauntlet came off. Same scars, same trembling. He set both pieces carefully on the ground beside him. They landed with heavy thuds. Next came the chest plate. This required more work. Day's fingers moved across a series of latches and releases. Each one made a mechanical sound. Click, clack, hiss. The chest plate split down the middle and swung open like a door. Inside, instead of padding or protective layers, there was a screen. A medical monitor built into the armor itself. The screen was filled with readouts and graphs and numbers. All of them were red or yellow, warning colors, critical colors, and everyone could see them because the screen faced outward. But it was not just the screen that made the crowd go silent. It was Day himself. His body, visible now beneath the open armor, was thin. Too thin. His chest showed the outline of ribs. His breathing was shallow and quick. And across his torso were more scars, some surgical, some not. He began removing the leg sections. These were the hardest. He had to bend down to reach the releases, and when he did, his breathing became labored. Sweat appeared on his forehead. The first leg brace came free, and immediately Day's left leg began to shake. He steadied himself against the wall with one hand, then removed the right leg brace. Both legs were trembling now. The muscles were visible beneath his skin, taut and strained. He looked like he was carrying a great weight, even though he was now carrying nothing at all. Finally, he reached for his helmet. This was the last piece, the one that hid his face. He touched the final releases, and the helmet hissed one last time. He lifted it off slowly, carefully, and set it down with the other pieces. The face that looked back at them was young. Maybe 30 years old, maybe less. Dark hair, dark eyes, a square jaw. He would have been handsome, perhaps, if not for the exhaustion written across every feature. His eyes had dark circles under them. His skin was pale. There was a scar running along his left cheek, and when he breathed, it sounded painful. The crowd was completely silent now. No one laughed, no one spoke. They all just stared at the medical monitor still displaying on the open chest plate of the discarded armor. The numbers were impossible to miss. Bone density, 40% below human baseline. Gravity tolerance, 0.7 G maximum recommended. Chronic pain level, 8.7 out of 10. Muscle degradation, stage 3 progressive. Combat engagements, 847. 847. Hana stared at the numbers, then at the human standing before her, trembling, struggling just to remain upright. Her earlier amusement had vanished completely. "This armor," Day said, his voice steady despite his body's shaking, "does not protect me from enemies, Ambassador Hana." He paused to take a careful breath. "It protects me from your gravity." The silence in the reception hall was absolute. Not even the music seemed to play anymore, though perhaps it did, and no one could hear it over the pounding of their own hearts. Every eye was on the human ambassador. Every translator was working overtime to make sure the words he had just spoken were understood correctly. "Your gravity?" Hana repeated. Her voice came out softer than she intended. Uncertain. This was not how this was supposed to go. Day nodded slowly. Even that small movement seemed to cost him effort. 1G, he said. Standard galactic gravity. The gravity right here, right now. The gravity in the assembly hall. The gravity on most space stations and ships. This gravity is killing me. Minho moved quickly to Day's side, offering support, but Day waved him back. "No," Day said firmly. "Let them see. Let them understand." He turned slightly to face the crowd more directly. The movement made him grimace with pain. "Earth has 1.3 G gravity," he explained. "Higher than 91% of inhabited worlds in the Concordat. Humans evolved there. Our bones grew dense and strong. Our muscles developed to handle that weight. Our hearts learned to pump blood upward against that pull. For millions of years, we adapted to heavy gravity." He paused to breathe. The crowd waited. No one interrupted. "But Earth is crowded now," Day continued. 7 billion people and growing. So we expanded. We built colonies on Mars, which has 0.38 G. We built stations around Europa, 0.13 G. We settled on Luna, 0.16 G. We spread to asteroids with almost no gravity at all. Millions of humans were born in these places. Born in low gravity. Raised in low gravity. We are the new generation of humanity." A delegate from the Korathi Dominion, a reptilian species known for their military strength, stepped forward from the crowd. His name was Vec, and he was a general. "I reviewed your file, Ambassador Day," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. 847 engagements. The Terran Defense Corps has only participated in 6 actual military conflicts since joining the Concordat. 6, not 800. "You are correct, General Vec," Day acknowledged. He looked directly at the reptilian, his dark eyes steady despite the pain obvious in his body. "Those 6 conflicts accounted for 92 of my engagements. The rest were not against enemy forces." "Then what?" Vec started, but understanding crossed his scaled features. "No." "Yes," Day said simply. "Every day I walk in this gravity is an engagement. Every hour I stand during assembly sessions. Every negotiation that lasts into the night. Every formal dinner where sitting would be seen as weakness. Every single moment I exist in your world instead of mine is a battle against gravity itself. And I am losing." He gestured at the medical readout still glowing on his discarded chest plate. "My bones are breaking down. Microfractures form faster than they can heal. My muscles are tearing themselves apart, trying to move my body against weight it was never designed to carry. My heart works 3 times harder than it should just to keep me conscious. The doctors tell me I have maybe 5 more years before my body gives out completely. Maybe less." Yuna's voice cracked when she spoke. "Day, you do not have to—" "Yes, I do." He cut her off gently. They need to know. He turned back to the crowd. I was born on Europa Station. Beautiful place. I could jump 10 meters straight up without effort. I could run faster than anyone. I felt strong there, powerful. Then Earth called for volunteers. They needed people to join the Defense Corps, to represent humanity in the galaxy, to serve on standard gravity stations and ships. The watching delegates were completely focused on his words now. Some had moved closer. Others had activated their recording devices. This was not entertainment anymore. This was something else. Something important. Earthborn humans dominate our military and diplomatic corps, Day continued. They can handle standard gravity easily. It is nothing to them, but there are not enough of them. Earth is one planet. The colonies are hundreds of stations and settlements. Most humans now are like me, low-gravity born. The galaxy operates on 1G standard. If we want to be part of this galaxy, if we want to matter, someone has to bridge that gap. He tried to stand straighter, and everyone could see the effort it took. So we volunteer. Thousands of us. We undergo progressive gravity training. They increase it slowly, over months, over years. We take bone reinforcement treatments, calcium injections, mineral supplements, experimental drugs that make our bones denser, but also more brittle. We do muscle stimulation therapy, electric shocks to force our muscles to grow stronger, even as they tear and scar. Hannah found herself speaking without meaning to. But why? Why cripple yourselves? What do you gain? Day looked at her directly. There was no anger in his eyes, no resentment, just tired determination. We gain you, Ambassador Hannah. Your respect, your friendship, your alliance. Earth is young in this galaxy. We are not the strongest. We are not the smartest. We are not the most numerous. Our technology is decades behind yours. Our military is a fraction of the size of the Velthrian Empire. Our economy is barely worth mentioning in galactic terms. He paused to breathe again. Deeper this time. Fighting for the air. But we can be the most determined. We can be the ones who never quit. Because we know something that perhaps your ancient civilizations have forgotten. What is that? Vec asked. The reptilian general's voice was different now. Respectful. That nothing worth having comes without cost, Day said, and we are willing to pay it. The medical readout on his chest plate suddenly changed. New warnings appeared in bright red. The text scrolled across the screen in standard galactic script, visible to everyone. Warning, microfractures detected. Left tibia, right fibula, right radius. Warning, muscle strain critical. Lower lumbar region. Warning, blood pressure elevated. Cardiac stress detected. Recommendation, immediate rearmor. Recommendation, medical attention advised. Day ignored the warnings. Most of us who volunteer for this will never walk unaided again after our service term ends, he said. We will spend the rest of our lives in low-gravity medical facilities. Some will need full support systems just to breathe. Some will die young, bodies worn out from years of fighting gravity. We know this. We accept it. Because someone has to represent humanity in your world, and we refuse to let our weakness stop us from trying. Minho could not stay quiet anymore. We are not weak, he said, his young voice fierce. Day can outthink half the ambassadors in that assembly hall. Yuna speaks 12 languages and can negotiate trade deals in her sleep. We are not weak. We are just different. No, Day corrected gently. We are weak, Minho. Physically weak. In this gravity, in this environment, we are cripples. Let us not pretend otherwise. He looked back at the crowd. But weakness is not the same as worthlessness. Weakness is not the same as defeat. I wear this armor because I am weak. I need it to function. I need it to stand. I need it to be here at all, and I am not ashamed of that. He began moving toward his armor pieces. Each step was agony, visible to everyone. His legs shook. His breathing came in gasps. Sweat poured down his face. He had been unarmored for less than 15 minutes. and already his body was failing. Yuna moved to help him, and this time he did not stop her. She picked up the leg braces while Minho grabbed the chest plate. Together they helped him put the armor back on, piece by piece, each one clicking and hissing into place, each one taking some of the terrible weight off his failing body. When the leg braces were attached, Day could stand straighter. The servos activated with a low hum, and the armor took his weight. His legs stopped shaking. When the chest plate was sealed, his breathing eased. The armor had its own oxygen system, its own support systems, compensating for his body's weakness. Finally, Yuna handed him his helmet. Day held it for a moment, looking at his reflection in the dark visor. Then he put it on. The seals engaged. The helmet hissed as it pressurized, and just like that, he was Ambassador Day again, fully armored, fully functional. The medical readout on his chest plate changed from red warnings to yellow cautions to green normal status. Inside the armor, he was stable. Inside the armor, he could do his job. He turned to face Hana. "You asked what this armor protects me from, Ambassador. Now you know. It protects me from reality. From the simple, terrible reality that I do not belong in your world. But I am here anyway. We are all here anyway. Every human in the Defense Corps, every low-gravity volunteer who chose to serve in standard conditions, we are all here anyway." Hana stood very still. Her compound eyes reflected the lights of the room in 1,000 different ways. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "Ambassador Day, I owe you an apology. I mocked what I did not understand." "You mocked what you saw as weakness," Day corrected. "But every species has a different definition of strength." A Velthrian military officer in Hana's group stepped forward. He was larger than Hana, his chitin darker, almost black. His name was Kovan, and he had fought in 17 wars. He performed a gesture in Velthrian culture that few had ever seen him make. He lowered his head and touched all 6 legs to the ground. Complete submission. Total respect. "My people have fought in battles where we outnumbered our enemies 10 to 1 and still retreated," Kovan said. "We withdrew because the cost was too high, because victory was not worth the sacrifice. But you fight gravity itself every moment and call it duty. You sacrifice your body, your health, your future just to be here, just to have a voice. This is not weakness, Ambassador Day. This is a warrior's spirit that we did not know humans possessed." Word spread through Apex Prime like fire through dry grass. Within an hour, everyone knew what had happened at the reception. Within 2 hours, the recordings had been shared across the station. By morning, every delegation had seen the human ambassador standing unarmored, trembling and suffering, explaining his truth to the galaxy. The human quarters were in the lower levels of the station, where gravity could be adjusted. When Dai, Yuna, and Minho returned that night, they stepped through a pressure door into their own small piece of home. The gravity immediately dropped to 0.4 G, a compromise between Earth's heavy pull and the colony's light touch. Day stopped just inside the door. He stood completely still for a long moment, just breathing. Then, slowly, carefully, he began removing his armor again. This time there was no audience. This time he could show the pain he had been hiding all evening. Yuna helped him with the chest plate. Minho took the leg braces. Each piece came off with the same hisses and clicks, but now Day groaned softly with relief. In the lower gravity, his body did not have to fight so hard. His muscles could relax. His bones could rest. He made it to the medical pod in the corner of the room before his legs gave out. The pod was designed for low-gravity medical care, shaped like a floating bed with monitors and support systems built in. Day lay down on it, and the pod adjusted automatically, scanning his body, measuring the damage from the day. 17 new microfractures, Yuna read from the pod's display. Her voice was tight with worry. "Day, That is worse than yesterday, and yesterday was worse than the day before. You cannot keep doing this. I can, Day said quietly, and I will. For how long? Minho asked. The young man sat down heavily in a chair that could handle even standard gravity's weight. You heard the warnings, 5 years, maybe less. What happens then? Then someone else takes my place, Day said. His eyes were closed, but he was not sleeping. Just resting, just letting the pain wash over him without having to hide it. There are always more volunteers, always more low-gravity children who want to serve, who want to prove that humanity matters. Yuna sat down next to the pod. We do matter, Day. We proved that tonight. Did you see their faces? They finally understand. Some of them understand, Day corrected. Others will need more convincing. And others will never care, no matter what we sacrifice. That is the way of things. Outside their quarters, the station buzzed with conversation. In 1,000 different languages, species discussed what they had witnessed. Some were moved, some were disturbed, some were inspired, and some began to ask questions they had never thought to ask before. In the Velthrian section, Hana sat alone in her chambers. She had dismissed her entourage hours ago. Now she sat in silence, watching the recording of the evening's events over and over. Each time she saw Day remove his armor, each time she heard his explanation, she felt something she rarely felt. Shame. She had meant to humiliate him, to put him in his place, to remind everyone that humans were the newcomers, the weak ones, the species that did not matter. Instead, she had revealed her own ignorance, her own arrogance, and worse, she had done it publicly, in front of hundreds of witnesses. But beyond the shame was something else. Curiosity. Respect, perhaps. How many species would do what humans were doing? How many would volunteer for slow destruction just to have a voice in galactic affairs? The Velthrian Empire was 10,000 years old. They had the best technology, the strongest military, the most influence. They had earned their place through superiority. But these humans were trying to earn their place through sheer determination, through willingness to suffer, through refusing to accept that they did not belong. It was admirable. Hana did not want to admit it, but it was. There was a chime at her door. She almost ignored it, but the chime came again. "Enter," she said reluctantly. Kovan stepped inside. The military officer still looked shaken by what he had witnessed. "I could not sleep," he said simply. "I keep thinking about what the humans said. 847 engagements, most of them against gravity itself." "I know," Hana said quietly. "In our longest war, the siege of Karvik Prime, our soldiers fought for 200 days without rest," Kovan continued. "We honor them as heroes. We built monuments to their sacrifice, but they fought for 200 days, and this human has fought for—" He paused, calculating. "How long has Ambassador Day been in the Defense Corps?" Hana pulled up the file. 7 years. Standard galactic years. 7 years, Kovan repeated. 2,555 days. Every single day a battle. Every hour an engagement. And he has at least 3 more years of service contracted. We call 200 days heroic. They call 7 to 10 years normal service. What does that make them?" Hana did not answer. She did not have an answer. Kovan moved to the window, looking out at the station and the stars beyond. "I have fought in 17 wars, Ambassador. I have killed enemies with my own limbs. I have seen friends die beside me. I thought I understood sacrifice. I thought I knew what warriors were." He turned to look at her. "But I never had to fight my own body every moment. I never had to choose between serving my people and destroying myself. These humans make that choice every day." "They are weak," Hana said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Physically, objectively weak." Are they? Kovan challenged. Or are we weak for never having to make such choices? We have energy shields and biosuits and adaptive technology. We can protect ourselves from almost anything. But what protects us from our own limitations, from our own weaknesses? We simply avoid them. We design around them. We pretend they do not exist. He gestured toward the door, toward the station, toward where the human quarters were somewhere in the lower levels. They cannot avoid their weakness. It is there every moment. So they face it. They wear it like armor, openly, honestly, and they serve anyway. That is not weakness, Ambassador Hana. That is strength we have forgotten how to recognize. Hana sat in silence for a long time after Kovan left. Finally, she made a decision. She opened a communication channel to the Velthrian High Command, back on the home world. The message would take hours to arrive, and hours more for a response to return. But she had to ask. Her message was simple. Request immediate authorization to share gravity assist technology with the Terran Defense Corps. Classification: Priority Diplomatic Initiative. Justification: Strategic relationship building with emerging species showing exceptional potential. She did not mention that she also felt she owed them something. That seemed too personal for an official request. In the assembly hall the next morning, the atmosphere was different. Delegates who had ignored the humans before now nodded respectfully when they passed. Some even came to speak with Day, asking questions about Earth and the colonies and the training volunteers underwent. General Vec of the Karathi Dominion approached during a break in proceedings. Ambassador Day, he said formally, my government has reviewed the recordings from last night. We would like to discuss a potential partnership. What kind of partnership? Day asked. His armor creaked slightly as he turned to face the reptilian. Training, Vec said. Your methods for pushing past physical limitations. Your techniques for enduring constant hardship. These could benefit our military forces. In exchange, we could offer advanced medical technology. Perhaps help extend your service time. Heal some of the damage. Day considered this carefully. I will present your offer to Earth's Council. But I must be honest, General. We do not want to extend service time. We want to make it unnecessary. We want technology that allows low-gravity humans to serve without destroying themselves. That may be possible, Vec admitted. Our bioengineers are skilled. Perhaps they could develop something. Exoskeletons that support without adding weight. Gravity compensation that does not require such heavy armor. That would be valuable, Day said. Very valuable indeed. More offers came throughout the day. A crystalline species offered to study human bone structure, hoping to find ways to strengthen it. A species of energy beings proposed sharing techniques for managing chronic pain. Even a hive mind collective expressed interest in documenting the human volunteers' experiences for their historical archives. Humanity's proposal, which had seemed doomed to be ignored, suddenly received serious attention. The request for military academy partnerships, which would have been laughed at yesterday, was now being genuinely discussed. Several species that had been automatic no votes were reconsidering, but the most significant development came near the end of the session. The speaker called for attention, and the hall quieted. The Velthrian Empire wishes to make an announcement, the crystalline being chimed. Hana rose from her seat in the upper levels. All eyes turned to her. The Velthrian Empire proposes a new initiative, she said clearly. We will be sharing certain gravity assist technologies with the Terran Defense Corps. Furthermore, we sponsor Earth's petition for military academy partnerships, and we commit resources to helping develop better support systems for low-gravity-born humans serving in standard conditions. The hall erupted in surprised murmurs. The Velthrian Empire, one of the most powerful and selective species in the galaxy, was publicly supporting humanity. That meant something. That meant everything. Hana looked down at Day in his seat far below. He had turned to look up at her. Though she could not see his face behind the helmet's visor, she imagined he might be smiling. "The Velthrian Empire recognizes strength in many forms," Hana continued, "and we have learned that the most profound strength is often found not in those who face no challenges, but in those who face impossible challenges and persist anyway. Humanity has earned our respect. Now they will have our support." When the session ended, Hana made her way to the human section. She found Day, Yuna, and Minho together, discussing the day's developments. When they saw her approaching, they stood. Day's armor servos whined softly with the movement. "Ambassador Hana," he greeted her formally. "Thank you for your support in the assembly." "Thank you for opening my eyes," she replied. "I came to apologize properly, not just with words but with action. The gravity assist technology we are sharing, it will not fix your condition, but it should help. It should make each day less of a battle." "Any help is appreciated," Day said. Hana hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering her since the night before. "Ambassador Day, why did you agree to show us? You could have kept your condition private. You could have maintained the illusion of strength." Day was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice thoughtful. "Because the truth is more powerful than any illusion, Ambassador Hana. If we pretend to be strong in ways we are not, then our actual strengths go unnoticed. But if we are honest about our weaknesses, then when we succeed despite them, everyone can see the real strength that carried us through." 3 months had passed since the Grand Assembly at Apex Prime. The galaxy had changed in small but significant ways. The recordings of Ambassador Day removing his armor had spread far beyond the station, reaching thousands of worlds. Some species watched with sympathy, others with curiosity, but most watched with a new understanding of what humanity represented. On Earth, in the Terran Defense Corps headquarters in Geneva, Fleet Admiral Soman stood before a wall of screens. Each screen showed a different world, a different species, a different military academy. All of them were now partnered with Earth's training programs. 5 partnerships, she said, a note of wonder in her voice. "We asked for 3, and they gave us 5. The Karathi, the Velthrians, the Crystalline Collective, the Methane Breathers, and even the Ancient Archivists. This is beyond what we hoped for." Across from her sat Commander Hyun, the man responsible for training the Defense Corps volunteers. His hair was gray, his face lined with decades of difficult decisions. "It is because of Day," he said simply, "because he showed them the truth, because he made them see our people not as primitives, but as warriors." "Warriors who are dying for the privilege of being heard," Soman said quietly. She pulled up medical files on one of the screens. Hundreds of names, hundreds of young people from the colonies, all suffering the same progressive degradation as Day. "The Velthrian gravity assist technology has helped, but it is not enough. We are still losing volunteers to medical discharge every month. We are still asking children to destroy themselves for a chance to matter." "I know," Hyun said, "but they keep volunteering. The waiting list has actually grown since Day's speech went public. More want to serve now, not fewer. They see him as a hero." "He is a hero," Soman agreed, "but he should not have to be." Back on Apex Prime, the station had returned to its normal rhythms. The assembly had ended, most delegates had returned to their home worlds, but some had stayed, including the humans. Day sat in the human quarters common area, working on reports. His armor was off, the gravity set to a comfortable 0.4. Yuna and Minho were there too, along with 3 new arrivals. Fresh volunteers from the colonies, young and eager, ready to begin their service. One of them, a woman named Jiwoo, could not stop staring at Day. She was 19, born on Titan, and she had grown up watching his speeches and recordings. To her, he was not just an ambassador. He was proof that colony-born humans could stand equal with anyone. Is it true you served at the Fornax negotiations? She asked, her voice filled with awe. I read that you stood for 18 hours straight during the final session. Day looked up from his work and smiled slightly. It is true, though I do not recommend it. I spent the next week in medical care. But you did it, Jiwoo insisted. You did not quit. You did not ask for special treatment. You just endured. Enduring is what we do, Day said gently. It is not always glorious. It is often painful, but it is necessary. Another new volunteer, a young man named Kwan, spoke up. We all watched what you did at the assembly. What you said. About weakness and strength. About fighting gravity itself. He paused, struggling with emotion. My whole life, people told me I was weak because I was born on Ganymede, that I could never be a real human, not like the Earth-born. But you showed everyone that there is more than one kind of strength. Day set down his datapad and looked at the 3 new volunteers carefully. They were so young, so hopeful, so ready to sacrifice. Before you begin your service, he said seriously, I need you to understand something. What I said at the assembly was the truth, but it was not the whole truth. They looked confused. Yuna and Minho exchanged glances but said nothing. The whole truth, Day continued, is that this will break you. Not might, will. Your bones will fracture. Your muscles will tear. Your organs will strain. You will live in constant pain, and when your service ends, if you survive it, you will be disabled for the rest of your life. That is the cost. That is what no one talks about in the heroic recordings and inspiring speeches. Jiwoo's eyes were wide. But you knew this when you volunteered, and you did it anyway. I did, Day confirmed, because I believed the cost was worth paying. But you must decide that for yourselves, each of you. Not because I inspired you, not because you want to be heroes, but because you truly believe that humanity's voice in the galaxy is worth your future. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Kwan spoke. It is worth it, he said quietly. I have already decided. I am not changing my mind. Neither am I, Jiwoo added firmly. The 3rd volunteer, a quiet young man named Tae Yang, just nodded his agreement. Day studied them for a moment longer, then nodded. Then welcome to the Defense Corps. Your training starts tomorrow. It will be the hardest thing you have ever done. But you will not be alone. We endure together. That evening, Day received a message requesting a private meeting. The sender was Ambassador Hana. He found her waiting in one of the station's neutral meeting rooms, a space designed to accommodate different species comfortably. She was alone, which was unusual. Velthrian ambassadors rarely went anywhere without their entourages. When Day entered, his armor making its characteristic heavy sounds, she stood in the gesture of respect her species used for equals. Ambassador Day, she greeted him, thank you for meeting with me. Of course, Day replied. How can I help you? Hana gestured to a seat designed for armored beings. Day sat carefully, his servos adjusting to take his weight. I wanted to give you an update personally, she said. The gravity assist technology we shared, your engineers have been working with it? They have, Day confirmed. It is already showing promising results. The new prototype suits reduce the effective gravity by nearly 15%. That might not sound like much, but for our volunteers, it could add years to their service life. Good, Hana said, and she sounded genuinely pleased. But there is more. The research teams working together have discovered something interesting. A potential side effect of combining Velthrian biotechnology with human bone reinforcement treatments. Day leaned forward slightly. What kind of side effect? Regenerative, Hana said. Not enough to heal the damage completely, but enough to slow it significantly. Maybe even stop the progression in some cases. The theory is still being tested, but the early results are encouraging. For a moment, Day could not speak. He had accepted years ago that his service would end with disability, that he would spend the rest of his life in medical care. That was the price, and he had been willing to pay it. But the possibility of not having to, of actually recovering, that was almost too much to hope for. "How long until you know for certain?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Months, perhaps a year," Hannah admitted. "Science cannot be rushed. But I wanted you to know, wanted you to have hope." "Thank you," Day said quietly, "for this. For everything you have done since the assembly." Hannah was quiet for a moment, then spoke with unusual honesty. "I have been thinking about what you said, about weakness and strength, about paying costs. My species has had power for so long that we forgot what it was like to struggle for it. We forgot that the strong are not always those who face no challenges, but those who face challenges and overcome them." She looked at Day directly, her compound eyes reflecting his armored form. "You have taught us something valuable, Ambassador. You have reminded us what determination truly means, and for that, I am grateful. The Velthrian Empire is grateful." Word of the potential medical breakthrough spread quickly through the Defense Corps. Volunteers who had been preparing for inevitable disability now dared to hope for recovery. Families who had watched their children sacrifice their futures now saw the possibility of different endings. But Day cautioned everyone against too much optimism. "It is a possibility, not a guarantee," he told the new volunteers during their first training session. "You must still be prepared for the original cost. Hope is good, but hope alone will not carry you through the hard days." The hard days came soon enough. The progressive gravity training was brutal, just as it had been for every volunteer before them. Starting at 0.5 G and increasing slowly, carefully, monitoring every sign of stress and damage. Jiwoo cried herself to sleep most nights, her body screaming with pain. Quan pushed himself too hard and ended up in medical care for a week. Taiyang was quiet but determined, enduring with the same steady resolve that had made him volunteer in the first place. Day watched them struggle, and he remembered his own training, remembered the pain and doubt and fear, but he also remembered the pride when he completed it, the satisfaction of earning his armor and his place in the Corps. That pride had carried him through 7 years of service. It would carry them too if they let it. 6 months after the assembly, the Grand Concordat held a special session. The topic was Earth's petition for expanded military academy partnerships. What had started as a request for 3 partnerships had grown into something much larger. Now, 15 species wanted to work with human training programs, not because they thought humans had superior technology or tactics, but because they recognized the value of the human approach to adversity. The proposal that came out of that session had a name. The delegates voted to call it the Jin Protocol, named after Ambassador Day's family name. It was a comprehensive program for teaching that true strength came not from natural advantages, but from the willingness to endure and overcome limitations. When Day heard the name, he asked them to change it. "This is not about me," he protested to the assembly. "This is about every volunteer who has served, every colony-born human who has chosen to sacrifice for our species' future." But the delegates refused to change it. "The program may be about all volunteers," General Vec explained, "but you were the one who made us see them. You were the one who showed us the truth. Your name will remind us of that truth every time we speak of it." And so the Jin Protocol became official Concordat doctrine. Military academies across the galaxy began incorporating its principles, not just for humans, but for all species, teaching that challenges were opportunities, that limitations could be overcome, that the measure of a warrior was not what came easily, but what they endured to achieve their goals. On a quiet evening 3 months later, Day sat in the human quarters on Apex Prime. His armor was off, his body resting in the medical pod. Yuna was reviewing the latest reports from Earth. Minho was helping the new volunteers with their training schedules. Everything felt normal, routine. Then Day's personal communicator chimed. It was a priority message from the research team, the one working on the regenerative treatment. He opened it with trembling hands. The message was simple, direct, and changed everything. Treatment successful in trial phase. Bone density increased 17%. Muscle degradation halted. Pain levels reduced by 40%. Subject able to function in 1G gravity without armor for up to 6 hours. Proceeding to wider trials. Recommend Ambassador Day as primary candidate for full treatment protocol. Day read it 3 times. Then he read it again. Yuna noticed his stillness and came over. "What is it?" she asked. He showed her the message. She read it, and her hand went to her mouth. "Day, this is a chance," he finished quietly. "A chance to serve longer, a chance to live without constant pain, a chance to maybe, someday, walk on Earth itself without needing armor." Minho came over to see what the commotion was about. When he read the message, he whooped with joy, startling the new volunteers. "This is incredible! This changes everything!" "It changes much," Day agreed, "but not everything. There are still thousands of volunteers who need this treatment. Still years of work ahead, still challenges to overcome." "But it is possible now," Yuna said, tears in her eyes. "Recovery is possible. That is more than we had before." That night, as Day lay in the medical pod watching the stars through the viewport, he thought about everything that had happened since that evening at the reception. How one moment of honesty, one decision to show the truth instead of hiding it, had changed so much. Humanity was no longer seen as the weak newcomers to galactic society. They were seen as determined, resilient, willing to pay costs that others would not even consider. And now, thanks to cooperation with species like the Velthrians, those costs might not be as high as they once were. But the volunteers would keep coming. Young people from the colonies, eager to prove that their birthplace did not define their worth, ready to fight gravity itself for the chance to serve their species. And now they would do so knowing that their sacrifice might not be permanent. That recovery was possible. That hope existed. Day smiled in the darkness. His body ached, as it always did. His bones were still weak, his muscles still damaged. He would need months of treatment before he saw real improvement. But for the first time in 7 years, he could imagine a future beyond service. A future where he might walk freely again, where he might return to Europa and jump 10 meters high just for the joy of it. That future was not guaranteed, but it was possible. And possibility, Day had learned, was a powerful thing. It was what had driven him to volunteer in the first place. It was what kept him standing when everything hurt. It was what would carry humanity forward in the galaxy. Because humans, more than any other species, understood one simple truth. Nothing was truly impossible. Some things were just harder than others, and hard had never stopped them before.